Welcome back to Grave Hush, where the highways hold secrets darker than the night itself. I'm your host, bringing you true stories from America's most haunted roads. Tonight we have 4 highway horror stories that will make you question everything you think you know about the open road. But we're starting with something so mysterious, so impossible, that even experienced truckers refuse to believe it until it happens to them. How is it possible for dead truckers to still be calling for help on CB radio? How can voices from a truck that burned 20 years ago still be broadcasting on Channel 19? And what happens when living drivers answer their calls? Let's find out. Channel 19 was broadcasting from inside a truck that burned 20 years ago. My name is Marcus Cole, and I've been hauling freight across the Midwest for 12 years. I know every truck stop, every way station, and every mile marker between Chicago and Denver. But what happened to me on Interstate 80 through Nebraska last September, it changed everything I thought I knew about CB radio and the voices that travel through the static. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night, or Wednesday morning, depending on how you count it. I was westbound, hauling electronics from Illinois to a warehouse in Colorado. The stretch of I-80 through Nebraska is about as lonely as highway gets. Endless cornfields on both sides, maybe one truck every 20 minutes, and nothing but darkness between you and the horizon. I had my CB tuned to Channel 19, the trucker channel, listening for reports about speed traps or weather ahead. Most of the night it had been quiet, just the occasional driver asking about parking or complaining about construction delays. That's when I heard the voice. Breaker, breaker, this is Road Dog Mike eastbound on 80 mile marker 126. My rig is on fire and I can't get out. Repeat, truck fire at mile marker 126, I need immediate assistance. The desperation in his voice made my blood run cold. Mile marker 126 was only about 15 miles ahead of me. I grabbed my CB handset immediately. Road Dog Mike, this is Freight Master westbound. I copy your emergency. I'm about 15 minutes from your location. I'm calling 911 right now. There was a pause, then his voice came back, weaker this time. Thank God, Freight Master, the fire's getting worse. I can't get my door open. Please hurry. I called 911 while pushing my truck as fast as I dared on the dark highway. The dispatcher took my report and said they were sending fire and rescue to mile marker 126. But when I asked if they had received any other calls about the truck fire, she said no, which was strange because you'd think other drivers would have reported it by now. As I got closer to mile marker 126, I started looking for the glow of flames, smoke, anything that would indicate a truck fire. But the highway was completely dark. No fire, no smoke, no emergency vehicles, nothing. When I reached mile marker 126, I slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder. There was no burning truck, no truck at all, just empty highway and cornfields on both sides. I grabbed my CB again. Road Dog Mike, this is Freight Master. I'm at mile marker 126 and I don't see your location. Can you give me a better position? The response came immediately and it chilled me to the bone. Freight Master, I can see your headlights. You're right next to me, man. Why aren't you stopping to help? I looked in every direction. There was nothing there. No truck, no fire, no Road Dog Mike, just my own headlights cutting through the darkness. Mike, I said into the handset, trying to keep my voice steady, I need you to describe exactly what you can see from your location. I can see your blue Peterbilt, he replied. You just drove past me. The fire's getting worse, man. I can feel the heat on my legs. Please, I have a wife and kids back in Iowa. My heart was pounding now. He was right about my truck being a blue Peterbilt, but there was no way he could see it if I couldn't see him. Unless... Mike, I said, what year is it? There was a long pause. When his voice came back, it was confused, frightened. What kind of question is that? It's 2003, September 15th, 2003. Why are you asking me that? I felt like I'd been hit by lightning. 2003, 20 years ago. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and started searching online for truck accidents on I-80 in Nebraska in September 2003. What I found made my blood freeze. September 15th, 2003, mile marker 126, Interstate 80, Nebraska. Single vehicle accident involving a blue Peterbilt driven by Michael Road Dog Mike Patterson, age 34, from Des Moines, Iowa. Truck caught fire after leaving the roadway. Driver trapped inside cab died from smoke inhalation before rescue arrived. Survived by wife and 2 children. "Mike," I whispered into the CB. "Mike, can you hear me?" "Yeah, I'm here. The smoke's getting real bad now. I keep passing out. Are you coming to help me?" I could hear the terror in his voice. This man had been reliving the worst moments of his life for 20 years, not knowing he was dead, still calling for help that would never come. "Mike," I said, my voice breaking, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. You need to stop fighting the smoke. You need to let go." "What are you talking about? Let go. I have to get home to Susan and the kids. They're expecting me tomorrow." "Mike, Susan knows you're not coming home. She knew 20 years ago. Your kids, they're grown up now. They have kids of their own." The silence that followed lasted so long I thought the connection was lost. Then barely a whisper. 20 years? But I just left the terminal this morning. I sat there on the shoulder of I-80 talking to a dead man on CB radio, trying to help him understand what had happened. I told him about the accident, about how he'd been trying to avoid a deer that ran into the road, how his truck had rolled and caught fire, how the rescue teams found him too late. "I don't understand," he said, his voice growing fainter. If I'm dead, why am I still here?" "Maybe," I said, "because you were waiting for someone to answer your call, someone to tell you it's okay to let go." The CB went quiet for a long time. Then one last transmission, so faint I almost missed it. "Tell Susan I tried to make it home. Tell my kids their daddy loves them." And then, silence. I never heard Road Dog Mike's voice on Channel 19 again. But I did some research when I got home. Turns out other truckers had been reporting ghost voices on CB radio at mile marker 126 for 20 years. All of them describing the same desperate calls for help. The same man trapped in a burning truck that no one could find. I reached out to Susan Patterson, Mike's widow. She's remarried now, lives in Cedar Rapids with her new husband. When I told her about the CB transmission, she cried. She said for 20 years she'd felt like Mike was still out there somewhere, still trying to get home to her and the kids. "Maybe now he can rest," she said. Every time I drive past mile marker 126 on I-80, I tune my CB to Channel 19 and listen. Nothing but static now, just the way it should be. But late at night, when I'm driving through dark stretches of highway, I remember Road Dog Mike's voice calling for help across 20 years of death and silence. And I wonder how many other voices are out there in the static waiting for someone to answer their call. Some say CB radio can reach across impossible distances. Maybe it can reach across time itself. That was our first story tonight. But the highway holds many more secrets. Our second story tonight comes from a driver who learned that some shortcuts don't just save time, they steal it. I aged 30 years in a single night. My name is Jake Morrison, and I need to tell you this while I still remember how to speak clearly. Last week I was 34 years old. Tonight I look 65. The doctors say it's impossible, that accelerated aging like this doesn't exist. But my wife can barely look at me anymore, and my 5-year-old daughter asked Mommy why Grandpa was living in our house. I was running late on a delivery from Denver to Salt Lake City. A snowstorm had shut down I-80 through Wyoming, and I was already 8 hours behind schedule. The company was breathing down my neck about the delay, threatening to dock my pay if I didn't make up time. That's when I saw the road. It wasn't on my GPS, wasn't on any map I'd ever seen, but there it was. a perfectly paved highway cutting straight through the mountains where nothing should exist. No signs, no route numbers, just smooth black asphalt disappearing into the darkness. A handwritten sign at the entrance said, "Shortcut to Utah, 4 hours saved." I should have kept driving, should have stuck to the main highways like every smart trucker knows to do. But I was desperate, and that sign promised exactly what I needed. The road started normal enough. Good pavement, easy curves, no traffic. My headlights cut through the mountain darkness as I climbed higher into terrain that seemed impossible for a highway to cross. But I was making incredible time, flying through miles that should have taken hours. That's when I noticed my hands on the steering wheel. The skin looked different, rougher, more lined than it had been when I started the drive. I figured it was just the harsh light from the dashboard, maybe the stress of running late making me see things. But then I caught my reflection in the side mirror. My face looked older. Not just tired, but actually older. The crow's feet around my eyes were deeper, my hairline had receded, and there were gray streaks in my beard that hadn't been there that morning. I pulled over and grabbed my phone to take a selfie, compare it to photos from earlier that day. What I saw made my heart stop. In the space of 2 hours, I had aged what looked like 10 years. I tried to turn around, but the road behind me was gone. Not blocked, not under construction, just gone. Where the highway had been was now solid rock face, like the road had never existed at all. The only way was forward. I kept driving, watching in horror as my reflection continued to change. My hair turned completely gray, then white. Deep wrinkles carved themselves across my face like someone was fast-forwarding my life. My hands became spotted and gnarled, the skin hanging loose like an old man's. The pain started around hour 3. My joints began aching, my back stiffening like I'd been hunched over a steering wheel for decades instead of hours. My vision blurred and I had to squint to see the road ahead. When I tried to call my wife, my voice came out cracked and weak, like I was speaking through a throat that had aged 50 years. She didn't recognize my voice, thought it was a prank call. But the worst part was feeling my mind start to slow down, memories becoming fuzzy, thoughts taking longer to form. I could feel decades of life experience that I'd never lived flooding into my brain, aging me from the inside out. By hour 4, I looked like my own grandfather. The road finally ended at a truck stop that shouldn't have existed. The building looked ancient, like it had been there for centuries, with gas pumps from the 1950s and a neon sign that flickered last chance fuel. An old man came out to greet me, moving with the slow shuffle of someone who'd lived far too long. When he spoke, his voice was like mine had become, cracked and ancient. "Welcome to the end of the shortcut, son. You made good time." I tried to ask him what was happening to me, why I was aging so fast, but he just smiled with teeth that were too old and too knowing. "Time moves different here," he said. "This road compresses years into hours, decades into days. Most folks who find it are running late for something, desperate to save time. But time ain't free, boy. It's got to come from somewhere." He pointed to other trucks parked behind the building, covered in dust and rust like they'd been there for decades. The drivers were nowhere to be seen. "They're still inside," he said, pointing to the diner. "Been ordering the same cup of coffee for 40 years now, trying to figure out how to get their young bodies back. But once time's been spent, you can't unspend it." I begged him to tell me how to reverse what had happened, how to get my life back. He just shook his head. "Can't go backwards on this road, son, only forward. But I'll tell you what I told the others. You got 2 choices. You can stay here with us where time doesn't move at all anymore, or you can take the exit back to your world and live with what you've become." I chose to leave, chose to go back to my family, even looking like this. The exit dumped me onto I-80 in Utah, exactly where I was supposed to be. Made perfect time on my delivery just like the sign had promised. But the price was everything I'd been before that night. My wife thinks I'm having some kind of psychotic break, that I've hired an old man to pretend to be her husband. My daughter is terrified of me. The company fired me because they think I'm too old to drive trucks safely. The doctors want to study me, can't understand how someone can age 50 years overnight. They've run every test they can think of, but there's no medical explanation for what happened to me. I know the truth, though. Somewhere in the mountains between Colorado and Utah, there's a road that trades years for miles. And there are other drivers out there running late on their deliveries, desperate enough to take any shortcut they can find. If you ever see a road that's not on your GPS, a highway that promises to save you time, keep driving. Don't take the shortcut, because some roads don't just take you where you need to go. They take you when you need to be, and they keep everything in between. Our third story tonight involves a weigh station that measures more than just cargo weight. Our third story tonight comes from a trucker who discovered that some accidents never really end. The headlights in my mirror belong to a truck that crashed here in 1987. Name's Tommy Briggs, been driving the I-35 corridor between Dallas and Oklahoma City for 6 years. It's a straight shot, good road, steady work, but there's a 15-mile stretch just north of the Texas border that every trucker knows to avoid after midnight. We call it the Phantom Mile, though it's really 15 miles of cursed asphalt where something hunts in the darkness. I should have listened to the warnings. It was 1:30 a.m. on a Thursday when I hit that stretch. Running behind schedule because of a blown tire in Dallas, trying to make up time before my delivery window opened. The highway was empty, just me in the darkness and the endless white lines disappearing under my headlights. That's when I first saw them in my mirrors. 2 headlights, maybe half a mile back, coming up fast. Too fast for the posted speed limit, but I figured it was another driver trying to make up time like me. Happens all the time out here. But as the lights got closer, something felt wrong. The headlights were too low, too wide apart, like they belonged to an older truck. And they were dim, yellowed like old bulbs that hadn't been changed in decades. When I adjusted my speed, the lights matched me exactly. When I slowed down, they slowed down. When I sped up, they stayed the same distance behind, following me. I grabbed my CB radio. Breaker, breaker, this is Lone Star running northbound on 35, got a truck behind me with no identification lights. You running legal back there, driver? Nothing but static. The headlights crept closer. In my passenger mirror, I could make out the outline of the truck now. An old Peterbilt, maybe from the 80s, with a high cab and long hood. The kind of truck you don't see much anymore. But something was wrong with it. The chrome was tarnished, the paint looked faded and streaked, like it had been sitting in weather for years. And there was no driver. I could see into the cab through the windshield, and it was empty. No silhouette, no movement, just an empty seat behind a steering wheel that turned by itself to follow the curves of the highway. My hands started shaking on my own wheel. I pushed the accelerator down, trying to put distance between me and whatever was following me. My speedometer hit 70, then 75, then 80. The speed limit was 65, but I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to get away from those headlights. But they stayed right behind me, matching my speed perfectly. That's when I noticed the mile markers were wrong. I'd been driving this route for 6 years, knew every mile marker by heart. But the numbers I was seeing didn't match what should be there. Mile 47 came after mile 52. Mile 39 appeared twice. And some markers had letters instead of numbers, markings I'd never seen before. The ghost truck was pulling me into somewhere else. I tried the CB again, scanning through all the channels, desperate to reach another driver. But all I got was static except for channel 13. On channel 13, I heard something that made my blood freeze. a voice crackling through decades of interference calling for help. Mayday, Mayday, this is Big Joe eastbound on 35, mile marker 43. Lost my brakes, can't slow down. There's construction ahead, orange barrels, workers on the road. I can't stop, oh God, I can't stop. The transmission cut to static, then repeated, the same desperate call for help over and over like a recording stuck on loop. I checked my current location, mile marker 43. The headlights behind me suddenly surged forward, closing the distance between us. I could see more details of the ghost truck now. The windshield was spider-webbed with cracks, the front bumper was dented and twisted, and there were dark stains on the chrome that looked like dried blood. This was the truck from the CB transmission, Big Joe's truck still trying to stop for construction that had ended 37 years ago. But I realized something that terrified me even more. If I was at mile marker 43 and there had been construction workers here in 1987 and Big Joe couldn't stop his truck in time, I was driving into the exact spot where multiple people had died. The ghost truck was trying to recreate the accident, using me as the instrument of death it had been all those years ago. I slammed on my brakes, but my truck didn't slow down. The pedal went to the floor, but my speed remained constant. Whatever force was controlling the ghost truck had taken control of mine as well. In my headlights, I saw them. Orange construction barrels lined the right lane, just like Big Joe had described. Work lights illuminated a crew of men in hard hats and reflective vests, working on the road surface with jackhammers and asphalt equipment. They looked up as my truck approached, their faces showing the same terror they must have felt 37 years ago. But these weren't living construction workers. They were ghosts, doomed to replay the last moments of their lives every night, waiting for a truck they couldn't escape. I yanked the steering wheel hard to the left, trying to swerve around the construction zone. But the wheel wouldn't turn. My truck stayed locked in the right lane, bearing down on the phantom workers who scattered in the same pattern they must have used decades ago. The ghost truck behind me was feeding off the approaching collision, its headlights growing brighter, its engine roaring with supernatural hunger. That's when I remembered something my grandfather had told me about highway ghosts. They're stuck in loops, replaying the same tragedy over and over, but they can be broken if someone changes the pattern. I reached for my CB radio and switched to channel 13. Big Joe, I said into the handset, this is Tommy Briggs in 2024. I can see your truck behind me and I know about the construction workers, but listen to me carefully. You can stop. You have brakes. You just have to remember how to use them. The voice on the radio paused mid-transmission. Who is this? How do you know my name? Because I'm driving the same road you died on, Joe, but I'm not going to let it happen again. Not to me and not to those workers. We're going to change this ending. I can't stop, the voice said, weaker now, more confused. The brakes are gone. The hydraulics failed. I can't. Your truck is fine, Joe. The accident already happened. You're dead, and so are the construction workers, but you don't have to keep killing them every night. You can choose to stop. The headlights behind me flickered. I pressed the radio button again. Joe, I need you to hit your brakes. Right now. End this loop. Let those workers rest. The construction zone was 50 yards ahead. The phantom workers looked up at my approaching truck with the same hopeless expression they'd worn for 37 years. But something changed. The ghost truck's headlights began to dim. I felt control returning to my own vehicle. My brakes responded when I pressed them. My steering wheel turned when I cranked it left. I swerved around the construction zone, missing the phantom workers by inches. In my mirror, I watched Big Joe's ghost truck finally come to a stop just short of the work zone. The headlights went out. The engine noise faded, and for the first time in 37 years, the construction workers weren't killed in a phantom truck crash. They looked at each other in amazement, then slowly faded away, finally able to rest. The mile markers returned to normal. My CB radio picked up normal trucker chatter. The highway became just a highway again instead of a supernatural trap. I never saw Big Joe's truck again on that stretch of I-35. Other drivers tell me the Phantom Mile isn't haunted anymore, that you can drive through there at any hour without incident. But sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through areas where accidents have happened, I tune my CB to channel 13 and listen. Because there are other ghost trucks out there, other drivers trapped in their final moments, endlessly recreating the tragedies that claimed their lives. And sometimes, if you know how to listen, you can help them find their way home. The dead don't always stay buried on America's highways. Sometimes they keep driving, stuck in loops of tragedy and regret. But every ghost was once a person, and every phantom trucker was once just a driver trying to make it home safely. We owe it to them to help break the cycle. Our fourth story tonight takes us to a place where the dead never clock out. The Flying J was open, but it burned down 5 years ago. Name's Carl Henderson, 23 years on the road, and I thought I'd seen every nightmare these highways could throw at me. I was wrong. Dead wrong. It was 2:15 a.m. on Highway 287, middle of nowhere, Texas, when my fuel light started screaming. 20 miles left in the tank, next truck stop 40 miles out. That's when I saw the neon bleeding through the darkness like a wound. Flying J Travel Center. 24-hour service. But I knew this stretch of road, driven it 100 times. There was no Flying J here. The parking lot was packed with trucks, but something was wrong with the picture. No running lights, no engine noise, no diesel smell. Just 40 rigs sitting in perfect silence like a truck graveyard. I parked and walked toward the building. That's when I smelled it. Smoke, not fresh smoke, but the kind that soaks into everything and never leaves. The smell of things that burn too hot, too fast. The automatic doors opened with a cheerful ding. Inside, the restaurant was bustling with activity. Truckers at every booth, waitresses moving between tables, the grill sizzling with orders. Normal truck stop scene except for one thing. Every customer had third-degree burns covering their bodies. Melted faces smiled at me from the booths. Charred hands lifted coffee cups with fingers that were nothing but blackened bone. A man at the counter turned to look at me, and I could see his skull through the holes where his eyes used to be. But they were all acting like nothing was wrong. "Welcome, honey," said the waitress, approaching me. Her blonde hair was singed to the scalp. Her pink uniform was black with soot, and when she smiled, I could see that her teeth had been fused together by heat. "Name's Betty. You look tired. Sit anywhere you like." I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The smell of burned flesh was overwhelming, but underneath it was something else. Coffee. The most incredible coffee smell I'd ever encountered, rich and warm and promising everything I'd ever needed. Betty poured me a cup without being asked. The liquid was perfect, dark and steaming, and when I looked into it, I saw my own reflection staring back. But my reflection looked wrong. Older, more tired, with burns starting to creep up my neck. "Drink up, sweetheart," Betty said. "How special, made with love." I lifted the cup, but before it reached my lips, I heard something that saved my life. A CB radio crackling from somewhere in the kitchen. "Mayday, mayday, this is Big Mama's Diner on 287. We got a grease fire spreading fast. Multiple casualties, need immediate assistance. The whole place is going up. Oh God, we can't get the doors open." The transmission was old, full of static, but I recognized the voice. It was Betty, younger, more alive, screaming for help that never came. Betty, in front of me, smiled wider, her burned lips cracking. "That was 5 years ago, honey." September 15th, 2018, grease fire started in the kitchen, spread to the fuel pumps outside. Killed 18 people, truckers, staff, customers. We all went up together. The other customers turned to look at me, and I saw the truth in their ruined faces. These weren't just burned corpses. They were people who had died in agony, who had clawed at locked doors, who had burned alive while rescue was still 20 minutes away. But you know what the funny thing is? Betty continued, refilling my cup. We never closed. Not for a single day. Oh, the building might look a little different now, but we still serve the best coffee on Highway 287. And our customers, well, they just keep coming back. I looked around the restaurant again and saw it for what it really was. The walls were charred black, the windows were blown out, the floor was covered in ash and debris. I was sitting in a burned-out shell, surrounded by the dead. The coffee in my cup wasn't coffee. It was something dark and thick that smelled like motor oil and tasted like despair. Every trucker who stops here becomes part of our family, Betty said, her voice changing, becoming deeper, more hungry. Some fight it at first, but they all give in eventually. The loneliness gets to them, the endless miles, the empty roads, the nights that never end. We give them what they really want, a place to belong, forever. I tried to stand, but my body felt wrong, heavy. Looking down, I saw that my hands were starting to change. The skin was bubbling, turning black at the edges. The burns were spreading up my arms. Don't fight it, honey, Betty said. The fire only hurts for a minute. Then you'll be one of us. No more deadlines, no more dispatchers, no more loneliness. Just coffee and conversation in the same warm booth every night for eternity. But I remembered something my grandfather told me about places like this. Ghosts are trapped by routine, by doing the same things over and over. But if you can break their pattern, force them to confront what they really are, sometimes you can escape. I stood up, fighting against the supernatural weight trying to pull me down. Betty, I said, look around you. Really look. This isn't a restaurant. It's a tomb. She followed my gaze to the destroyed walls, the collapsed ceiling, the scattered remains of the people who had died here. For a moment, confusion flickered across her burned features. You're not serving anyone, I continued. You're not helping tired truckers. You're just dead people pretending the fire never happened. But it did happen. You all burned. You all died. And keeping other people here won't bring you back. The illusion began to crack. The cheerful diner music distorted into screams. The warm lighting flickered and revealed the reality of the burned-out building. The other dead truckers looked at their hands, saw the truth of their condition. Betty's face crumpled, ash tears running down her blackened cheeks. I remember now, she whispered. The pain, the smoke, the doors that wouldn't open. We tried so hard to get out. The building began to shake, the supernatural hold on reality breaking apart. But instead of collapsing, something else happened. Light began to fill the burned-out shell, warm and welcoming. Not the false light of the ghost diner, but something real. The dead truckers stood up from their booths, no longer burned and broken, but whole again. They looked at me with gratitude before walking toward the light, finally free to leave the place where they had died. Betty was the last to go. Thank you, she said, her appearance restored to what she must have looked like before the fire. We were so tired of being trapped here. So tired of the same night, over and over. Then she was gone, and I was alone in the empty ruins of the Flying J. I walked back to my truck on shaking legs. The fuel gauge still showed nearly empty, but when I turned the key, the engine started with a full tank. Sometimes the dead pay debts in their own way. I drove straight through to the next real truck stop, where I called the state police to report what I'd found. They said they'd investigate, but when they arrived at the coordinates I gave them, there was nothing there but an empty field. The Flying J had finally burned down completely, taking its ghosts with it. But I learned something that night about the lonely places on America's highways. There are truck stops and diners that exist only for the dead, places where time stopped when tragedy struck. And sometimes, if you're unlucky enough to need what they're offering, you might find yourself staying much longer than you planned. These days, I keep my fuel tank topped off and I don't stop at places that feel too good to be true. Because on the long, dark highways of America, sometimes the most welcoming lights belong to the dead, and they're always looking for new customers who might want to stay forever. That concludes our journey through 4 of America's most haunted highways. Remember, when you're out there on the road in the dark hours before dawn, not every light leads to safety. Some lead to places where the dead still punch a time clock. This is Grave Hush, reminding you that the road goes on forever, but not everyone who travels it makes it home. Drive safe, keep your fuel tank full, and if you see a truck stop that seems too perfect, too welcoming, too good to be true, keep driving. The dead have all the time in the world, but you still have a life to live. Our 5th story tonight comes from a driver who learned that grief can make you see things that aren't there, or worse, things that are. The woman I picked up looked exactly like my wife, who died last year. Name's Jake Morrison, been driving solo routes since Sarah passed. Cancer took her last March, and I've been running from that empty house ever since, taking every long-haul job I can find. Anything to keep moving. Keep the memories at bay. I was eastbound on I-40 through New Mexico, middle of the night, when I saw her standing on the shoulder with her thumb out. Even from a distance, something about her posture, the way she held herself, made my heart skip. As my headlights hit her, I slammed on the brakes so hard my trailer jackknifed. It was Sarah. Same auburn hair, same blue dress she wore to our anniversary dinner. Same smile that had made me fall in love 20 years ago. But Sarah was dead. I'd watched them lower her casket into the ground. I'd thrown dirt on the lid with my own hands. She approached my truck with that familiar walk, that little bounce in her step. When she climbed into the passenger seat, she even smelled like Sarah, that vanilla perfume she always wore. "Jake, honey," she said, and her voice was exactly right, down to the slight Texas accent. "I've been waiting for you." My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. "Sarah, you're dead. I saw you die." She laughed, and it was Sarah's laugh, musical and warm. "Death isn't what we thought it was, baby. I've been trying to find you, to come back to you. Don't you want me back?" Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was impossible. But my heart, my broken, grieving heart, wanted to believe so badly it hurt. She reached over and touched my face with fingers that felt real, warm, alive. "I've missed you so much, Jake. These past months, watching you suffer, watching you run from our memories. You don't have to run anymore. I'm here now." I started driving again, not knowing what else to do. Sarah sat beside me like she had on 1,000 trips before, chatting about nothing and everything. She knew things only Sarah could know. Our first date, our wedding song, the name we'd picked out for the baby we never had. But as the miles passed, small things began to feel wrong. She mentioned restaurants we'd never been to, trips we'd never taken. She called me honey instead of baby, the way she always had. And when I looked at her in the dash lights, her eyes reflected yellow like an animal's. "Remember our trip to Colorado?" she said, smiling. "How we saw those elk by the lake." "We never went to Colorado together," I said carefully. Sarah was afraid of mountain roads. Her smile flickered for just a moment. "Of course we did, baby. You're just tired. You've been driving too long, working too hard since I've been gone." She reached into the sleeper berth and pulled out a thermos I'd never seen before. "Made you coffee, just the way you like it." Sarah never made coffee. She hated the smell, always complained when I brewed it at home. "Jake," she said, her voice taking on a pleading tone, "you're scaring me. Don't you remember? Don't you want to be with me again?" I looked at her more closely. Her face was right, her voice was right, but there was something moving under her skin. Shifting, crawling. like something else was wearing Sarah's appearance like a mask. "What are you?" I whispered. Her facade cracked. The warm smile became predatory, showing teeth that were too sharp, too many. The blue dress rippled and changed, becoming something made of shadow and hunger. "I'm what you need me to be, Jake," she said, but now her voice had harmonics, multiple tones speaking at once. "I'm Sarah, I'm your mother, I'm every woman you've ever loved and lost. I can be all of them whenever you want. You just have to let me stay." The thing that looked like Sarah began to change more rapidly now. Sarah's face melted and reformed into my mother, who died when I was 12, then my high school girlfriend who'd been killed in a car accident, then Sarah again, but wrong, with too many fingers and eyes that swirled like oil. "All I need is a ride, Jake," it said in Sarah's voice. "Just keep me with you and I'll be anyone you want me to be. I'll fill that hole in your heart. I'll make the loneliness go away forever." But I realized something then. The real Sarah would never have tried to erase the pain of losing her. She would have helped me learn to live with it, to carry it without being crushed by it. "You're not Sarah," I said. "Sarah would never try to trap me like this." The creature's mask slipped completely. What sat beside me now was something ancient and hungry, something that fed on grief and loneliness. Its true form was fluid, shifting, made of shadows and half-remembered faces. "You pathetic little man," it snarled. "Do you really think you can go on without her? Do you think anyone will ever love you like she did? I'm offering you paradise and you're too stupid to take it." I pulled over on the shoulder and opened the passenger door. "Get out." It laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You can't make me leave, Jake. I'm already inside you, in your memories, in your dreams, in every moment you wish she was still here. I am Sarah now. I am your grief-given form." But I'd learned something about grief in the year since Sarah died. It wasn't something to be cured or filled or replaced. It was love with nowhere to go. And love doesn't trap people or lie to them or wear their faces like masks. "You're right," I said. "I do miss her. I miss her every day, but missing her is better than forgetting her. And you're not her. You're just a parasite feeding on what we had." I reached across the cab and physically pushed the creature toward the open door. It fought me, changing forms rapidly, becoming every person I'd ever lost, every face I'd ever loved. But I could see through the deception now. The real Sarah was in my memories, in the 20 years we'd shared, in the way she taught me to be a better man. This thing was just hunger wearing her face. It fell out of the truck and onto the asphalt, its form already beginning to dissolve. As I drove away, I could hear it calling after me in Sarah's voice, begging me to come back, promising me everything I'd lost. But I kept driving, because the real Sarah wouldn't have wanted me to stop living just because she couldn't be there with me. I never picked up another hitchhiker after that night. And sometimes, late at night when the loneliness gets too heavy, I still see figures on the roadside who look like people I've lost. But I keep driving, because the dead deserve better than to be imitated by things that feed on our pain. And the living deserve better than false comfort from creatures that wear the faces of our beloved dead. Sarah is gone and nothing can bring her back. But she's still with me in the ways that matter, in the love that doesn't need a body to inhabit or a voice to speak. That's something no shapeshifter can ever steal or replicate. This is the end of tonight's journey into the darkness that follows America's truckers. Remember, when you're alone on the highway and grief sits heavy in your heart, be careful what comfort you accept from strangers. Not every helping hand belongs to the living, and not every familiar face belongs to someone you once knew. This is Grave Hush, reminding you that the dead should rest in peace, not masquerade as hitchhikers on lonely highways. Drive safe and remember that true love doesn't deceive.